Okay, let's kick things off. Picture this huge handshake, basically, across continents.
Hmm.
A massive deal, brewing since, what, January 2022?
Yeah, about that. And finally sealed, May 6th, 2025, we're talking the India-UK Free Trade Agreement.
Seriously big. I mean, the world's fifth and sixth largest economies coming together. Just think about the scale of that for a second.
It really is.
That's
And
right,
it's
yeah.
uh, it's more than just a document, right? It's about taking down some of those economic walls. The tariffs that make trading goods more expensive, more complicated.
Right, the friction.
Exactly. This FTA, it's meant to smooth all that out, make things flow better between two really significant global players.
And the ambition here is, well, it's pretty massive. They're talking about boosting the current trade, which is already 42 billion by another 25.5 billion.
Uh-huh. Within about 15 years, by 2040, that's the target.
A bold target, no doubt. But what I really want to get into for you listening is, what does this actually mean? Beyond the headlines and the big numbers, what changes?
Yeah, good question. And to get to the what, I think we need to look at the why now,
Right.
because the whole global trade situation, it's been a bit uncertain lately, hasn't it?
Definitely. You saw countries kind of looking inwards, maybe thinking back to those trade barriers from a few years ago. It made things feel less well connected.
Precisely.
Mm.
So in that kind of environment, for India and the UK to push this through, to actually finalize it, that feels like a very deliberate statement.
Yeah, they're saying, look, despite the headwinds, we still believe in this. It's a vote of confidence in, global economic ties.
And what's really striking when you dig into the details is just how broad these tariff cuts are. I mean, think about it. Almost everything India currently sends to the UK
Uh,
is going to see those import taxes reduced or just vanish completely. 99%. That's huge for Indian businesses looking at the UK market.
so things like those amazing Indian textiles or seafood, spices of it.
Spices, footwear, apparel.
Yeah. Suddenly, they get a lot more competitive on the shelves in Britain. That's a direct shot in the arm for those industries in India.
But it's definitely not just a one-way thing. The UK gets some major wins too. About 90% of what they export to India will see lower tariffs.
90%, okay.
And a big chunk of that, 85%, actually becomes totally tariff-free over the next decade. That opens up a massive growing market for British firms.
Right. So think about classic British stuff becoming maybe more common in India.
Yeah.
Like cars, maybe.
Cosmetics.
Cars, cosmetics, yeah. Even things like lamb, salmon, chocolate, definitely chocolate. And crucial things like medical devices, too. Lower tariffs can really shift the landscape for these UK sectors in India.
And the savings involved, the actual pounds and rupees saved by businesses.
Well, the projections are pretty significant. By, say, 2035, UK exporters could be saving close to 900 million a year,
Wow.
and Indian exporters over 400 million annually. That's serious capital they can then, reinvest, maybe into innovation, maybe creating jobs. Both sides benefit. Okay, but let's focus on one area I know got a lot of attention: Scotch. And gin, too. Those faced some pretty intense import duties going into India, didn't they?
Oh, intense is putting it mildly. It was a staggering 150% tariff on Scotch whiskey and gin. 150,
Yeah.
which basically put them in this super premium, almost untouchable price category for a lot of people in India.
Right. So how does the deal change that?
Dramatically. It's
Yeah.
not immediate zero, but it's a big drop straight away, and then it gets phased down further. It'll eventually reach 40% over the next 10 years.
40%. Still significant, but way down from 150. So for someone in India who enjoys a good Scotch or a G&T, this could mean, well, much more affordable options appearing over time.
Exactly. Reason to raise a glass, perhaps, and importantly, it works the other way too. Indian spirits get easier access to the UK.
Ah, interesting. So maybe we'll start seeing more Indian single malts on UK shelves. Or what was that idea? Mango lassi cocktails.
Yeah, maybe. It could definitely inject some new flavors and variety into the UK drinks market. That reciprocity is key.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. Cars. Iconic British brands. Jaguar, Land Rover, which, funnily enough, are owned by India's Tata Motors now.
Yeah,
They faced huge tariffs in India too, right? Like 100%.
that's right, 100%. The FTA tackles that, bringing the tariff down significantly to 10%.
10%, that's a massive drop.
It is, but there's a key detail here. It's under a quota system.
Ah, okay, so it's not unlimited cheap British cars flooding the market.
No, there'll be a specific limit on how many cars can come into India each year at that lower 10% rate. But still, it definitely makes those vehicles more accessible than they were.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the Indian auto market, especially given the Tata ownership angle.
Definitely adds an interesting layer. And another really noteworthy piece of this deal isn't about goods at all, it's about people. Skilled professionals.
Oh, how so?
Indian professionals who go to the UK for short-term work assignments, they'll now be exempt from paying UK national insurance contributions
For how long?
for up to 3 years.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty big incentive. What's the practical effect?
Well, it lowers the cost, essentially, for the Indian professional working there and for the UK company hiring them. It could really grease the wheels for more talent exchange, especially in fields like IT, engineering, where specialized skills are really in demand.
Makes sense. Easier movement of expertise.
Yeah.
So, stepping back, what's the sort of big picture economic view from the top?
Yeah.
Are the leaders optimistic?
Very much so. You hear Prime Minister Modi talking about boosting trade, investment, innovation. Prime Minister Starmer highlighting how it'll stimulate the UK economy, bring benefits to people there. The general vibe is positive. More trade, more investment, more jobs.
And are there specific sectors everyone's pointing to as the big winners?
Yeah, I think in India, it's those labor-intensive areas. We mentioned textiles, food products. Easier access to the UK market should really help them.
Right.
And for the UK, it's those industries that were really hampered by the high Indian tariffs before. So whiskey, absolutely. Cars, definitely. They're expecting significant export growth there.
Sounds good on paper. But getting here, 3 years of talks. That sounds like a slog.
It really was. They kicked off formally back in January 2022, and think about everything that happened since then. Political shifts in both countries.
Yeah, the Indian general election, and the UK had, what, several leadership changes?
Exactly. Navigating all that political flux while trying to hammer out a complex trade deal, that's a huge challenge in itself.
So it needed a real final push, presumably from the top.
It seems like it. You had India's Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, and the UK Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, really putting in the hours, especially in those final meetings in April this year.
Good.
And apparently that meeting between Modi and Starmer at the G20 summit back in February, that gave it the final momentum needed to get it over the line.
Right. Now, thinking about the timing again, and that shaky global trade picture we talked about, this deal feels kind of significant, doesn't it? People have talked about globalization.
Yeah, globalization, it's a good way to put it. That really rapid globalization we saw for decades, it definitely slowed down. You had the financial crisis, geopolitical tensions like the war in Ukraine, struggles at the World Trade Organization.
Yeah.
It all led to a more cautious, maybe more inward-looking approach in some places, more focus on resilience, domestic supply chains.
So against that background, this India-UK deal, it really does stand out.
It really does. It kind of pushes back against that narrative, showing that major economies can still find common ground, can still strike these big trade deals. And you have to remember the domestic context too, right? India's pushing Make in India.
Right, boosting local manufacturing.
And the UK is actively building its post-Brexit trade network. This FTA fits neatly into both of those national strategies.
Okay, let's try and pin down the winners here. Who comes out ahead?
Well, clear winners, I'd say, are those Indian exporters, textiles, shrimp, spices, apparel getting better UK access. British consumers, too, potentially getting more choice and maybe better prices on Indian goods.
And UK industries.
Definitely. Whiskey, cars, chocolate, medical devices. Getting into that huge Indian market more easily is a big win. And don't forget the Indian professionals going to the UK, saving on that national insurance.
Right.
And just generally, anyone who believes in the benefits of more open trade will see this as a positive step.
Okay, but are there any groups who might, well, feel the pinch? Any potential downsides?
It's possible some local producers in India might face tougher competition from British imports now that tariffs are lower. You'll likely hear from protectionist voices in both countries who, generally prefer higher barriers.
Makes sense.
And it'll be interesting, too, to see if this deal influences how other big economies approach their trade policies. Does it put pressure on them?
So thinking bigger picture, beyond just India and the UK,
Yeah.
what are the ripple effects globally?
Well, for India, this could be seen as a stepping stone. Maybe it smooths the path for future deals with, say, the US or the EU. It signals India is serious about opening up further.
And for the UK?
It's a definite win for their post-Brexit strategy. Shows they can land significant deals independently. And for the Starmer government, relatively new, it's a concrete achievement.
Thing globally.
It just underlines this trend, really. With the big multilateral talks often stalled, countries are increasingly focused on these bilateral deals, these one-on-one agreements.
Yeah.
India's already done this with Australia, the UAE, EFTA. This is another big one.
Of course, signing the deal is one thing. Making it actually work is another.
Yeah.
Any potential roadblocks there?
Oh, absolutely. Implementation is everything. Both governments need to make sure the processes are smooth, that businesses can actually use the benefits of the deal. Bureaucracy can always be a hurdle.
Yeah, red tape.
Red tape, exactly. Getting products approved, navigating customs, and you can't discount potential domestic opposition flaring up later or, some other country changing its tariffs in a way that impacts things. External factors matter.
Okay, after all that serious economics and politics, let's just pause for a second. 3 years of talks between these two huge, culturally rich countries.
Hmm.
You have to wonder about the behind-the-scenes moments, right?
Huh. Yeah, you can almost picture it. Maybe some very polite but firm discussions about Scotch tariffs happening over, I don't know, excellent Darjeeling tea. Or maybe debates about samosa quality versus scones.
Or maybe Minister Goyle and Secretary Reynolds bonded over complaining about, like, internal government IT systems. Or Modi and Starmer found common ground on cricket at that G20 meeting.
You could totally see that, explaining the nuances of leg spin bowling. And beyond the leaders, think about the grassroots stuff. More Indian IT folks in the UK, maybe influencing the food scene even more.
Yeah. British folks discovering even more regional Indian cuisines. Maybe some unexpected fusion things start popping up.
It's a good reminder, isn't it? Trade isn't just about containers and numbers. It's about people, cultures connecting, mixing things up.
So let's try and wrap this up. This India-UK free trade agreement, sealed May 2025. It feels like a really significant moment, especially given, everything going on globally.
It absolutely is. A big step for the economic ties between two major nations. And it has that potential for real, tangible impacts, cheaper goods, maybe new opportunities for businesses, for individuals.
Right. Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on. Beyond the pounds and the rupees, beyond the immediate economic shifts, how might these closer trade ties actually reshape the cultural fabric, the social connections between India and the UK in the years to come?
Yeah, what are those longer-term ripple effects? It's a fascinating question to ponder as this agreement starts to unfold.